So Caedrel has formed his own competitive team called Los Ratones, which, here's the interesting detail right off the bat. I did Spanish in school, but it's not something I kept up with. And spoiler, that was well over 20 years ago at this point in time. Actually, at the outset, one thing I'll very briefly say is I'm actually even a little bit confused by the naming and branding of this team right at the outset, because the name Los Ratones is Spanish, right? People will know Caedrel speaks Spanish. It's an interesting how to flex into. By the way, if you're going to be a core streamer, it's pretty cool to have like a second European language, and especially one of those nuts fan bases like the French or the Spanish in your back pocket. It's kind of a cool angle. If people don't know, Caedrel not only can speak Spanish, he is so fluent, he can actually go on streams of like the esports maniacals type people and just have like fluent conversations with them and just talk to them in that way. So actually a cool angle in that sense. But the part at the beginning, as someone who's obviously a complete layman when it comes to Spanish, I'm actually a bit surprised because I even tried looking this up. I remember thinking, right, so what he's done is I get the Spanish angle, right, but then he's called the team Los Ratones. Now, you're going to think, if you're just an English language speaker, yeah, he's picked the team, he's called it the Rats, right, because obviously Caedrel's sort of like crew, and the same way as I call my Patreon community the Screw Illuminati, he's gone with the idea that like they're the Rats, yeah, you're all the Rats. That's like the thing he plays up with, that sort of character on stream. Here's what I don't get. Am I mistaken? Is there someone Spanish can confirm this? Isn't Los Ratones like the mice though? Doesn't that mean the mice? Wouldn't like the rats be like Los Ratas or something? Because that's the part I'm confused about. I thought raton was like mouse and rata was rat. So has he just been clever and called it like the mice? Because at the end of the day, you do play professionally, so you use your mice. Is this supposed to be branding like that? Because if so, I feel like already hasn't he confused people out the gate? Doesn't everyone think it means the Rats, even though that's his fan base? So already I can see why you divide it up. By the way, if it is supposed to be the mice, that's a very clever name. If you don't know, that's where, even though now they're called Mouse, because esports is a nightmare where people brand and destroy the old heritage. If you don't know, the team Mouse Sports, I always thought was a very clever name because it isn't actually Mouse Sports like in English, is it? It's like Mouse Esports, but it also looks like it says mouse with the traditional word, and it has all these options of it, and we're all using the mouse, and you use a mouse to play a sport. I always thought that was actually a clever angle, clever ass what you're branding. So I'm actually already at the outset like a little bit surprised by the way it's named. It doesn't really make a lot of sense, but okay. I do obviously like Caedrel, and I like some of these players. At least some of them were very good players. Now, I will say, little warning to Caedrel, the one position in esports right now you don't really want to do, unless you have some amazing investment people, is make your own team. That's one of the only guaranteed surefire ways to lose a lot of money in esports, is paying famous people to play the game. Right now, there isn't much ROI on that one. You just tend to lose, and you just try to not lose loads with the hope that in the future you turn that into a league spot, which could be an asset, or you use that player as a vector to get sponsorships, which you then use to overall fund the company while you run through the investment money and hope in the future there are ways to sell merch and all these. But the point is, people haven't figured out monetization in esports yet. So I will say, if you're Caedrel, you better be watching your pocket when it comes to this team, or this could get real bad real fast. Didn't that disguised Tosh guy say he'd lost like $1 million or something running like the league team for a year, something absurd like that? So I will say, if on the other hand though, Caedrel was to get a Ridge wallet, then he wouldn't need to watch his pocket, would he? Because one of the things about the Ridge wallet, I always love telling you guys about it, is I've had my Ridge wallet for something like 4.5 years now or something. This is a newer one I got this year, I think. I had my old one for 3+ years. I would still have it now. It only got a little bit scratched. That was it. It was completely functional still. One of the best things about this wallet is it's just a quality of life upgrade. Like, it's quite slim. You can see, look how small it is. Look how small it is compared to all these things. Look how thin. By the way, I haven't even put the maximum amount of cards. You can put more than that in. I just put however many I've got here. Obviously, you can see here, like I've got like a travel card then and my bank cards and all that jazz. They all just slide out quite easily. You use that as like the thumb point, so you just push there. Then you've got all your cards. You can just access them. When you take it out, obviously this band here, I like to go with the band overall. That just is elasticy, so when you take them out, it'll just shrink down. It'll keep them all nice and compact, really slim, really easy to use. It's much, much smaller than other wallets, including those ones with the button. This one actually avoids all that, and the one with the button is limited because by the size of what it can do. This one can stretch out and fit way more. So this fits even more cards than I put in personally. I also, on the back, you can put all sorts. You can put like a money tray that slides in with coins. I don't tend to use coins, too baller for that. You can use one that's like a clip to put like other cards and stuff. It's like a clip that holds extra stuff that goes in. I prefer just this sort of like piece of fabric that just holds in, and then I put like, bonus cards and cards at the supermarket you click to get little extra points. I put those in the back part for easy access. Also, I personally love this key case. It's actually one of the best inventions they've made. You can fit something like 6 keys. I'm only using 2 at the moment. You can easily fit 6 keys in here. It's got a clip that can just go on the back. Also, that's magnetic, so you can just put it on a magnet on your wall. One of the best features, you're not going to get some crazy jingle jangle effect. Also, very slim as well. Look at it compared to the size of the wallet. Similar kind of width even. Just really, really good. I just genuinely find it very enjoyable. And if you now shop and buy a Ridge wallet for yourself or someone else, by the way, excellent time to buy a gift. This is also a great gift, by the way. It's not going to go off. You can just put it on a shelf and give it to someone for Christmas or Thanksgiving or whatever else out there that you might like to give someone a gift for. So with their Black Friday / Cyber Monday sale, which, by the way, as far as I know, has already begun, and I think it runs for like a few weeks at this point in time, they will give you up to 40% off your favorite Ridge items across their store. So not only can you do great savings for yourself on what I actually think is a quality of life upgrade, but also great gift to buy for a dad, an uncle. By the way, women will love this gift too. As long as, if they want coins, you get them the coin tray. If they want more things, you can get them a bigger size one. If you want a smaller one, there's all sorts. They've got so many different colors and styles on their website. They also have one of those guarantees where if you don't like it after a certain amount of time, you can just send it back in and they'll give you your money back. I think they have like a lifetime guarantee on it as well. Or they have all sorts of amazing shit on their website. Check it out. So if you use my code, it'll be on the screen in this video, ridge.com/Thorin, you can get up to 40% off many excellent items on the Ridge store. I've used it myself. I will continue to use it long after they finish sponsoring me. I just think it's an excellent thing to use in your day. So I've got to start when I discuss this team. Let's just start with who is in the team. So if you don't know, the whole premise of the team is it's basically 3 quite famous European players, 2 of them even with a former connection, if people forget about that one. And then you've got a famous European streamer, and then you've just got like a rookie from the competitive scene who wants to one day be a top player, we assume. So you've got in top lane, you've got Thebausffs, who obviously is the aforementioned streamer, who notoriously has that like int to win style in top lane, playing like Sion, etc. In the jungle is where the aforementioned rookie players, which is the guy called Velia, who's just a rookie jungler. Apparently he's been really highly rated on solo queue or whatever, and they're just giving him a chance to like play with veterans and learn from them and all, and maybe show off his skills in this great PR opportunity. Then you've got 3 very well-known players from the ULCS/LEC. You've got Nemesis as mid lane. Obviously, he is still an enormous streamer, and thanks to LS and his sort of circle of people, still a massive name within League of Legends that people do care about his thoughts on things in the game, and used to play at a high level in the LEC back in 2019 and 2020. By the way, a lot of people forget those are the only years he actually played in the league. He only played for 2 years. Then you have AD carry, you have Crowny, aka Crownshot, obviously was playing with BDS last year, but then ended up getting benched and for Ice, which didn't really affect BDS as much. I'll say as much because they didn't get that much sex, but the league had changed. So you've got Crowny there. And then lastly, the biggest name of all, one of the biggest names ever in European League of Legends, is obviously Reckless at support. He's keeping the support position that he just played over in T1 Challengers team, and technically as a sub for the official main team at Worlds, even though he was never going to be inserted into the lineup, obviously. And so the lineup features some massive names, and generally, then you add in Caedrel's involved, and he's like not only going to like, are they going to stream all this, but he's going to like coach them somehow, and supposedly he knows a bunch of these people. That's why he brought the team together. So one thing I have to do is, before we get into each player and what I think of them and will this team work and what what we have to ask is this, is what is the premise of this team? Because I'm not actually like down on the team, but I do find it a bit of a weird premise because I don't really understand how it makes sense for all 5 people. I understand for Caedrel how it makes sense, but I don't understand for the people in the team how it necessarily makes sense. So think it through in this way. So it's implied this is some sort of like a fun team, but also semi-competitive. Potentially, I think it's inferred, it's a vector in the future for maybe people to, again, be in LEC, or if you're someone like Velia, to be in LEC for the first time. But it's also going to be featured around like fan components, and again, fun and entertainment while streaming the scrims and the feedback sessions. And so that's the part I find a bit off. So as I go through the players and analyse them, I won't just analyse them in the game, I'm also going to analyse them from that perspective of like, what does it infer about what this person's perspective is on their career, where it's going, that they picked to be in this team? Because that's the problem I have. To me, you do one or the other. It's either a fun team, in which case no stress. People are playing because they don't mind about being pros at the moment. They just want to have some fun. Competitive in the sense they want it to be a real match on a set day that they can prepare for and practice for, and then people can watch. It's official. I get all of that part, but if you're good, they've tried to have their cake and eat it. They've tried to be like, it's a fun team, people eat your vibe, but it's also competitive. It's like, how competitive could it be? Because if you're saying it's competitive and that was in any way an important factor, then some of these players probably shouldn't have picked this team. Like, it actually doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, one of them I'll get to later is the only one on paper of the big three. Basically, Nemesis, Crowny, and Reckless. It doesn't really make sense any of these people are in this team if they all want to be pros. The one I'll give this a little bit of leeway to, again, you have to believe what he said, and based on my own experience, don't worry, that video will come quite soon. I will reveal that I think Reckless is an habitual liar who can't be trusted to actually report meaningfully on what he wants, what he thinks, and what people are doing around himself. But if I take at face value, I don't have any inside information about this, that Reckless wants to go back to Sweden and wants to play from home and doesn't want the pressures of, I don't know, living in Berlin and being back in the fishbowl of LEC and having everyone scrutinise him and people who don't like him saying he's shit, or people who love him can put all the pressure. If he just wants that, maybe that makes sense. But in that scenario, then you're not really doing this to be competitive, are you? You're more going for the fun side, and actually you want it to be less competitive to take a lot of the pressure off yourself and maybe just decompress a bit. That's fine. If that's true, then this team makes sense, actually. This even seems like an appropriate team, not least because, as you'll find out in my forthcoming Reckless video, you're going to think to yourself, but Reckless has already been in an ERL, Thorin. Remember when he was on Carmine Corp? Yeah, spoiler, the coach of Carmine Corp quite literally quit the team because of Reckless's behaviour and how he behaved within the org and drama he caused. And I have heard some nightmare fuel stories about him in that specific team of Carmine Corp and what a prick he was to loads of his teammates in that squad, and most of them didn't like him. And even worse, when I asked people within that team how good was Reckless at the time, they were telling me shit like he might have been the 6th best ADC in the LFL, not even the ERLs, the LFL, the one he was playing. Because if you don't know, domestically they were actually quite a poor team. They just won that one EU Masters where it all came together in the latter part of the year. So I have to say, actually, the idea of Reckless going down to a low competitive level sounds terrible to me. I don't think it fits his personality. I think he is someone who believes he has to be at the absolute top and he can't be seen to be making a mistake, or the one that's like being humbled by playing at a shitter level. Like, everyone who made fun, by the way, of like upsets, is you're the ones who always love to compare them for playing in like a bad team at the bottom of the LEC. It's way more respectable to be in a bad team in the LEC than just go, oh, would I have to be on potentially a bad team? Then I won't compete at all, or I'll compete at potentially like 2 or 3 levels below. Bro, you would laugh in the face of upset if he was like, I need a few months off, so I'm going to go and play in like Division 2 of the German fucking Prime League. You'd all laugh in his face, go, lol, look where his career's going. But Reckless can do it. It's okay. Bit of a weird one. I don't necessarily hope that part works out, but I do believe, based on his T1 journey and career and where his head seems to be at, spoiler, it's probably not going to be in a great position after I release my video, because my angle I take on that is going to blow your mind as to how I'm going to tell you the stories, because you're going to think, but how can I trust you and your person on it? You're going to see how I solve that, because I've sort of cut the Gordian knot. It's one of the reasons I waited so long to make the video. I've got a very interesting way of framing all the information that I think people will find interesting. I actually won't be getting in the way, believe it or not, but I'll tease you on that. I won't tell you how I'm going to do it. So we go into this lineup. Let's just run down the lineup for a second. So top lane is the Thebausffs FFS, or the Baus, as I suppose you're supposed to say. Right? Personally, this is an example of a player where I've always been a bit torn on this player, because obviously I was someone who for a long, long time has championed people like LS. By the way, even once upon a time, until quite recently when I thought his game fell off a bit, even people like Bwipo, people that everyone goes, oh, they're just trying to be edgy or like trying to be like unique and come up with their own takes, and they just refuse to just accept the meta. It's like, no, the whole point of these games is they're just games with a massive amount of tools and different ways of playing and using them. And what actually is the current meta, which is supposed to mean like, what does it meta? Does it mean meta mean something like most effective tactic available, right? If you take that to be literal, then why would you always do that? Because the point is the most effective tactic available to Chovy or Knight probably isn't the same most effective tactic for like Jackies or for Larson or something like that. They're different levels of player at a different level of team with different opponents, different teammates, different communication styles, different cultural styles, different ways of practicing. So as a result, I actually do think it is a mistake to think you always have to follow the global meta. With that said, My problem is, doesn't the Baus FFS take that to the absolute limit? Like, if he just played normals and streamed, I don't think he could ever complain. In a normal, what he's doing is fine. He just chose a totally counterintuitive way of playing the game with a different perspective on it, and you get some success. That's fine. You can do whatever you want in normals. I've always thought normals are the most underused thing in League of Legends, because everyone is a narcissist who desperately wants to win in the game, feel like they got something tangible, league point in this case, and then feel like, oh, no, I've struck my league. I am that good at the game. They'll never go when they're having an off day playing bad or they're playing shot and shot. They'll never just go play a normal game that's unranked and just go, right, let me just test things out. Let me just get some reps in. By the way, it was good enough for Faker. That's actually how Faker came up, playing normals, not playing ranked. So I've always thought, in normals, no problem. In Challenger/ranked, I've always thought the Baus FFS might actually push the line too much. I'm not somebody who claims to watch loads. I'm not like mid-beast studying all these guys in solo queue. But from some of the instances I've seen where he did look like he mega inted, the problem is, on the one hand, he did have the Bwipo factor, which is, I actually do believe it. I do believe he does have a different vision on the game, and it does have some level of efficacy. I've seen some of those games where it looked like he completely inted, but in doing so, he fixed the wave state, or he actually got back in the lane, or he somehow got enough kills or items or minions to get the items that in a team fight made him vaguely useful to later on add value to the team, even though it looked like he'd ruined the laning for it. I've seen him do that. The difference is, Bwipo's much better at him. He's obviously an actual professional player, and he was never quite taking the same liberties the Baus was. I always thought the Baus was walking the line between, like, I'm entertaining and having fun, and at the end of the day, who can say how you can play, so I can do what I want, and actually having some LS Bwipo type, I won't say genius because it's going too far, but like a different perspective on how to see the game and how to conceptualize what a death is worth. I mean, I'll give you a very quick example. A lot of even simple terminology that we all use in League now, I hope, actually wasn't widely discussed in the first 4 to 5 years of League. It wasn't a concept every pleb understood. So I'll give you an example. When you're laning, think about when you had that like Silas, Faker Silas versus that Chovy Ari clip, right? Those aren't really scenarios when you watch them doing trades where it's like, oh, one has more health than the other, so that means he's winning the trade. It's like, no, sometimes the guy who loses all the health trades that health in exchange for being able to hit the minions and get a little bit more farm, and he basically just says, right, I'm going to back in a minute anyway, oh, that's enough health to survive on, and also I get his abilities on cooldown, so maybe then I can't be ganked when he uses the ability on me, and then we hit the minions, right? There's concepts like that. People understand the concept now of like trading health for minions or for space, etc. But one thing they seem to miss is dying isn't always wrong. And especially in top lane, dying isn't always wrong because it's the longest lane. So as a result, sometimes you have to be able to reset that lane or die to reset the wave or get into a position where later on, like you die at first, but then you blow the flash of the other top lane. Now your jungler can come and get the kill and get your wave state back into a situation, or you can group together and go to the Herald or to the Grubs or whatever. The point is, I do think there is a level on which he's skirting right on the edge of that concept, where some of the things he's doing are clearly actually to try and win the game, just from a very different approach. But I also do think, because of the entertainment aspect, I do think it's a very convenient way to always just be like, lol, I guess my style didn't work today, when you've just hard-hinted like 9 kills in lane. So I also essentially understand why people get pissed off with that, and why some people don't want to play in that scenario. And irony of all ironies, even though people have made loads of memes going, nah, he's going to be fine with it, I actually do think, for real, that Nemesis and Reckless, especially, historically, what I know about them from their teammates and how they play and conceptualize the professional game in their teams, they, at least in the past, like in the Fnatic era, we're talking like 2019, 20, they would have hated someone like the Baus FFS. He would be the number one player / teammate they would fucking despise, and they would 24/7 behind closed doors talk shit about him privately to each other and their friends. So that already, I'm very interested to see how that dynamic works out. Because again, remember, if this is just a fun stream team and everyone remembers we're on stream during the scrims and the NLC games, assuming it's NLC, and the feedback sessions, then there's no problem. As long as you all remember the cameras are on, then it's going to be fine, because we can all put on a brave face and we can all remember, wow, what's anything crazy? Remember, delete that. But I think personally, once you have enough live sessions like that, eventually, the first few sessions, you're going to really be conscious, like, I'll be very careful what I say here, because I know I'm on stream right now in this feedback. I know that people are listening to me right now. I know that people are going to judge me. That only works for a while. These guys aren't like fucking Stanislavski method actors. They won't be able to keep that up for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. I've actually always thought one of the smart things Reckless did actually was not overly stream. He just did it sparingly, because I always thought if he streamed loads and tried to address every topic, like everyone who goes on the line enough, eventually he'll slip up. Eventually you'll start to get some of the real opinions leak out. He'll say something that'll infer something, or he'll say something without remembering what he lied or exaggerated before, and then that'll get him caught out later. I could already see a world where some of these people, by the way, add in Crowny, because he's someone who loves to argue about how the game's played. Look, I could see a world where Nemesis, Crowny, and Reckless, like for example, where like Nemesis and Reckless are cool, and Crowny and Reckless are cool. By the way, first of all, Nemesis and Crowny won't want to be hated on by Reckless fans. But I could see a world where not only Nemesis and Crowny are like arguing with or tilted by the Thebausffs, maybe they're even tilted by Velia because he's a rookie and he's a fucking jungler, the number one role to hate on, and obviously one of the highest level roles in the game strategically. But I could also see a world where like Nemesis and Crowny would be arguing and disagreeing on stuff. If people, I'll get to it in a second, but if people don't know, I mean, bloody Nemesis and Selfmade used to be teammates and have a lot of success in the RL level. When they played together in Fnatic, I've heard there are all sorts of fucking issues in that team, and they're supposed to be like fucking pals and ex-teammates. So if they can't get along, and they think they, as far as I know, they each thought they like played the game completely wrong. Like Selfmade was like power farming, and then Nemesis' whole shit was like, you have to know when to be there and know all the genius things, like a solo queue player and all that shit. So anyway, we'll keep that in mind, because I do potentially see some problems there, depending on how serious they see the team, not how serious Caedrel or the team itself is. Then if we look at the rookie, Velia, well, I just hinted at it there, right? Even if he's a rookie with a lot of talent, I mean, has European League of Legends ruined any role more than talented fucking junglers who are rookies? That is the number one role this fucking region chews up and spits out and never goes back to. And so if you're certain players who were actually showed real potential and even had like half a split where they looked good, but then it went to shit, some of them never get to come back for jungle. Because the perception of junglers, there's a million junglers out there, there's a million ERL junglers out there. We can get anyone for jungle. We can get a fucking Korean for jungle now. So I do think this guy, look, I hadn't heard of him. I don't follow League on his level, and obviously I'm not following solo queue. So maybe he is some mega talent who would have been found anyway. I would say this. For me, it feels like a 50-50. On the one hand, the upside for him is he gets to play with Nemesis, Crowny, Reckless, and in a team that involves Caedrel. That alone is going to put his profile 100 times bigger. But I'll also say this. That profile, when it's now zoomed in on stage with all the bright lights and fucking all the neon marquee sign behind it, and a team with Reckless and Crowny in it, one, you are going to be number one player flamed, possibly by your teammates, possibly by your fans, and then thirdly, you're already playing potentially the trickiest role for anyone to play. I think support is very, very tricky because people don't see what you do in team fights, so they won't give you credit for what you did well. Look at players like Kerry in fights. You don't see what Kerry did, you comment on what Gumayush or Faker did. But I will say this, I think support, understandably, hence why there's that whole like fucking controversial, like, gendered aspect to who plays what roles. It is the easiest role to be carried in. It's one of the only roles where, unless you're playing another genius level support, you sometimes can fuck up, miss everything, do everything wrong, not do any damage, not even help, not even shit, and sometimes just fuck around and win. You can't do that in jungle, in my opinion. It is years in the past. We're talking like, what, 8-9 years since you could just be completely carried in jungle. Nowadays in jungle, you have to be able to understand all sorts of concepts, which if they aren't shot calling, border on it. Like, at a minimum, you have to be able to relay info that someone else uses the shot call. So to have the rookie do that, I think already is enormous pressure. I can see the upside though. The downside though is if he flunks and he is perceived to be bad or the one that's fucking the game up, he will not only get loads of hate, but this might be his one big chance that might then set him back. So I think that would be a shame. Then if we talk about the three famous players. So for Nemesis, we'll start there, which is, I always thought Nemesis is a good player. Like Nemesis, every second of the entire time he was in LEC, he was an above average player in the LEC. At mid lane, he was always an above average player. Now, my problem is, how high do we go? If we're taking that he played 4 splits and 2 worlds, I would say at those tournaments, at 6 tournaments, I'm going to guess maybe 2 out of 6, he actually was like clearly a top 2 or 3 player for me. I always thought, even in some of the splits, because obviously Fnatic was always at the elite level at this time, I always thought there were times when either Humanoid looked like he was better and had more agency. I sometimes thought Larson was a better pure laner. You had a bunch of players in this era. Remember, you had Vethio come up. I guess that was actually slightly afterwards. Who would have been around in 2020, 2019? It would mainly be humanoid. I guess Abedage was better than Abedage most of the time, especially he looked more clutch on LAN. I do think the part that unfortunately sort of spoiled Nemesis' career, and I'll maybe do a video about him one day. By the way, I'll probably do one Reckless style, just ask a bunch of his teammates. But one of the things I will say about Reckless is this. Unfortunately, I do think, and a lot of players this applies to, but he's quite vocal. He's not very charismatic about it. I do think he has an absurdly large delta between where he imagines he is and was, and his ability level was in the game, and where it actually was. For me, he's someone where, like I say, there was maybe times where he was the second or third best mid laner, but he literally did interviews, guys, where he said stuff like he was better than Caps. Like, there's an interview he did, I think it was after Fnatic lost to G2 in the fourth split, so it would have been summer 2020, the one where Caps, like, Giga slaps him down in his, like, first split back at mid in the finals. I think after the finals, that Nemesis did an interview with, like, InVen Global or something, where he said something like he would be ranked above Caps in, like, the EU mid laner ranking list or something like that. Obviously, famously at Season 9 Worlds, his rookie season in LEC, he went to Worlds, and then in the playoffs, I think it was in the round of 8 onwards, or maybe it was when he lost it to FPX in the round of 8, that he said that epic line where he was like, Doinby is the worst mid laner left in the tournament. Now, I understand he might have meant things like pure laning, or hands, because at the time, actually, Doinby was more like a Xiaohu faker now where you're a mastermind, but he wasn't the sickest hands. Actually, it was a year or two later that Doinby came in saying in terms of his hands as well. So even though I understood what he meant, obviously that comes off really poorly when you get eliminated round of 8, including by that team, and you have some of the best players ever in European history around you. Meanwhile, Doinby basically is his team and uses the others as just like hands, or he's like fucking Freddy Krueger, like, I'm the brains and you're the brawn. He just does that, and he gets all these like skilled players like Tian and LWX and fucking Crisp, and they're just his minions and do what he wants. And he obviously masterminded a Worlds win, so it just looked bad in hindsight. But my point is, I have always thought Nemesis has this really strange perception of how good he is. Like, what's weird is Nemesis really does talk like he's Caps. I've never understood it. I've even seen when he criticizes, I talked about this in a video on this channel, when he actually criticizes players or people at the Fnatic org, I always want to go, where do you imagine you're going from here though? Like, there only is G2 left, and spoiler, I know the G2 players, I know the G2 management. It's not as crazy different as you think it is. Like, they have their own problems there. Spoiler, by the way, as soon as that roster with fucking Yankos and Perks wasn't around anymore, they already had problems. They already had their issues with the lineup with Reckless, then they had issues with Wonder and Mickey not wanting to resign, so they kicked them, and then they got a different coach. They've had all sorts of problems in G2. By the way, now even fuckers like Reckless are coming out saying G2 have conning him or mistreating him. Well, then where's the problem, Nemesis? Like, by that logic, everyone's being mistreated, so that doesn't then become an excuse to not win. And I always thought in his teams, if I was to go player by player in his teams, he had one of the best rosters of players in both years I've ever seen. Now, it might not have actually manifested in the server that way, but you couldn't ask for a better team, except for Broxer, who I'll admit I think was boosted. Except for Broxer, all those players are dynamite. Except that even for some of the G2 players, there's no one better you can get almost. And even then, you don't really lose every time because you're second best. In fact, second best often wins in sports. You often have very healthy rivalries between number 1, number 2, and number 3, regardless of quality of players. Fnatic just never could beat G2 when it mattered. In fact, I think it's worse for Fnatic that they used to win those BO1s in the group, in the like fucking round robin, and then they just have no chance in the playoffs, or they'd always lose the clutch game. He's one of the reasons why, in my opinion, he was very good, but he wasn't Caps. And unfortunately, he didn't then adjust his play. He tried to play like a not as good version of Caps. So I think my issue here is this. Despite all I just said there, this might surprise you, but he is the most overqualified player in theory to play on this team. And why I say that is very subtly built. One, he is one of the players that's been at a much, much higher level than this. And it's not that he was bad and he has to play at this level, which, by the way, you could argue, even though it's not like Crowny's bad, Crowny has had behavioural issues, which mean people don't want him and he doesn't get the offers, it seems. Reckless has massive behavioural problems. He's even had to role swap. I've even heard lied about the role swap and pretended he did that, and that's why he was benched. I've heard Fnatic just let him say that. And they told him, basically, you're benched anyway, when he was ADC. And then he was like, I'm going to say I'm role swapping and will consider something different because it's all about his ego and his PR image. So I think Reckless, actually, at this point in time, one of the reasons I think he was on T1 Challenger League is I don't think he had many spots. I've heard the team he could have gone to is he could have gone to Rogue as their support, like in 2023. He said no. I've heard because I think he didn't want to look shit at support and then be on a team that wouldn't have been very good and just look like he was inting and then his career would be over. Because I do think Reckless, based on things I've heard, does have a perception. It's very extreme, but it reminds me actually of people like the LSs and the core streamers of the world. They have this perception that if they ever let their status slip or their image slip, it will, in the same way as their career spiraled up to incredible success, it will quickly spiral down to nothing. Which, look, it has happened to people. I think it's a little bit hysterical. I don't think that's really true. I actually think if you're someone like a Reckless, even though, yes, you could argue with some of the other great talents, sometimes they don't get to come back. I think you could have a bad split or an average split and still in the future someone will take a gamble on you. Now, look, if they hear the stories about how you behind the scenes, they won't. But knowing what fans know, I don't think Reckless is like ridiculously overqualified to play in this team. He certainly seems like he's in a transition period of his career. He wasn't insane in Korea. He was all right. If you don't know, his team did fuck all in Korea. I think they were like 9th in the first split, losing the majority of the games. So they didn't make playoffs. Second split, I think they were like 6th. And then finished, I think, 4th in the Challenger playoffs. So they never particularly did anything in Korea. But obviously every one of his fans is going to go, hey, Reckless was dope though, and it was all the other players that suck. And it's like, bro, you're in T1 Challenger. Like, do you know how shit some of the teams that beat his team were? Like, you wouldn't want any of those players to play in top teams, including the LCK. So then you got Crowny, who technically is overqualified, but he has these issues where he's come off what I would suggest would probably be some not great references from people like BDS, etc. I won't say who within the team, but some of them thought he was a bit too argumentative or could only play his way or was one-dimensional or demanded the resources. So if you think of the 3 big names who are competitive players, Thebausffs is a big entertainment figure. Of those 3 names, Nemesis, Crowny, Reckless, for me, Nemesis is easily the most overqualified. Because as far as I can tell, there are actually GMs in both LEC and LCS, not LCS anymore, LTA now, who would have given this guy a starting mid lane spot in their league, I think every single year since he's quit in 2020. So in 2021, he could have had it, 2022, 2023. I imagine now there's probably a team that if he said, I want to come back to LEC now, LCS is a slam dunk, but if he said LEC, I think there's a bunch of teams who do it now. By the way, they probably should. He would, I imagine, be at minimum an average mid laner in the LEC. He'd probably be top half, wouldn't he? I mean, at the end of the day, I do think, look, I have no idea where this field for competitive is going to be. He hasn't played for like 3+ years. But I'll tell you what, I'll bet his fucking mechanics are straight fire. I bet his laning's going to be amazing. He's had the best possible practice you can have as a raw mid lane talent, not as a competitive player, for like 3+ years. There's actually a world, by the way, where for real, he could be much better relative to league strength than he was when he left, as long as he gets all the competitive details down. Like maybe now he actually could be a contender for best player in the league. I still think Caps will be better, but he could be up there. And by the way, we've also got quite a weak mid lane pool. So unfortunately, that is where, even though I think as a result, Nemesis, it doesn't, for me, it only makes sense he's in this team if he wants to test out competitive again, because it was so many years ago, or he just himself thinks of this as a fun team. If he thinks this is a fun team, totally fine. If he just wants to play with Crowny and Reckless, totally fine. That's all good. The problem I have is this, is I do think if he is at all serious, this is a player I immediately have alarm bells going off for. Like, I think this level is way too low for his ego. You've heard the stories. Supposedly, when he got those offers or there was interest in those past years from LCS, LEC. By the way, some of the teams being put forwards behind the scenes would have been like super teams or potential contenders for those leagues. If he was saying no to those teams and on the basis of like, I don't want to play with someone like that, or that guy, like all LEC talent, no thanks, or I have to get like a really good offer, implied that it has to be like the best Fnatic roster or like a G2 super team. If that's true, then it just comes off as, I don't think it plays well that you're then like, oh, but I will fuck around and play in NLC. It's like, that's not even one of the better ERLs. Like, what? So you're going to say no to giant orgs in LCS and LEC and super teams that could go to Worlds and win you your first ever LEC title in a major region, but you're going to go and play in NLC. Again, if you're doing it for fun, that's fine. But if you're trying to be at all competitive seriously, this doesn't make any sense. And I actually think this is one of the main people who will get mega triggered. I think it's someone who won't be able to handle playing with players that are inexperienced and at a level where, remember, this is that Nemesis had that Idra thing, in my opinion, where like I think you can even beat him just playing what at your level is appropriate tactic, and he will just go, but that's not top level tactic how Thorin Knight plays, so you're wrong. So even though you beat me, you're wrong. And in fact, now I'm going to flame you and say this league and this game sucks, because why do I have to play people who beat me with these inferior strategies? I think he is sort of in that vein, so I'm a bit concerned, actually, that he might be one of the issues elsewhere. I hope he gets along with Crowny well enough. By the way, Crowny's also the sort of guy who might seem like he's super forthright, a firebrand. No, when you put Crowny in the room with someone who's got like a bigger ego or who he really likes, like LS, Nemesis, actually, I think he's somewhat molds to them, and he will actually even hold back certain takes or going too spicy when he thinks it'll insult them. He's actually got some tact in that sense, in a way that I think Nemesis and LS don't actually. I mean, at least LS actually has a diagnosis of autism, by the way, so does apparently Reckless. So it's understandable as to why they might not be able to pick up on certain social cues like that. Crowny doesn't seem like that. He's a very strong personality, but I also think when you hear those stories that, again, make him sound like I used to say about double lifting, that fucking CLG that Link wrote the 30-page cry document about, it's like, bro, you make these guys sound like you're the Japanese fleeing from skyscrapers, and then they're double F's fucking Godzilla. Like, Crowny only seems like Godzilla if you're in a team full of like quiet, arrogant French people. Like, if he's in a team with other big personalities and people more experienced, I don't think he's going to take over the team. I think he's just going to do his job. So in terms of Nemesis, the other aspect I'll just quickly throw out there is, I could also see this being one of the people who will either just have to not talk or will run into drama with the whole, like, scrims are going to be streamed and so is the feedback / VOD review sessions. Like, this is someone where, how would I say this best? I heard, again, this is why I might do a video about him one day. I heard within some of his teams, this is straight up, like coaches have told me this. I've heard this is a player who for real thought that like solo queue, wait, no, which way around was it? Yes, I think he believed that scrims were a waste of time, and that solo queue was where you level your skills up, which is kind of an LS-esque take, I imagine, right? Because you're thinking of solo queue as the overall game and you're just working on your own skill, which was, well, I've got to tell you right now, the coaches I know in professional league would want the opposite mentality. They would want you to think, oh, it's solo queue that's just for like doing whatever and just, you know, testing out your hands and checking out a new matchup. And it's actually the scrim where I want you to be serious and practice with purpose and with a mentality, and not necessarily to win, but to practice what we're practicing, execution. So I will say that's a little bit disturbing right there. Look, I imagine these scrims are going to be fairly chill. It's not like a proper professional level team, but I also get the sense this is someone where I don't know that he's going to enjoy playing scrims against shitter teams and then officials against teams that they're probably going to lose the odd game. There's another thing. Everyone's acting like they're just going to sweep every single game and never ever lose. Dude, two of these players are very inexperienced. Some of the others just haven't played together. Yeah, you've got Nemesis and Crowny connection from fucking donkeys years ago. What, like 2018 or something? I don't know why people think this is a slam dunk. Like, teams aren't... League hasn't been based around names for like, what, fucking half a decade. It's like, that's why Mad Lions roster could actually be better than Fnatic's roster in a split, even though the names doesn't make any sense, because they could play more coherent league. They could actually draft according to a certain theme and strategy. The players knew how to communicate, were on the same page. They knew who the leader and the shot caller were. These are the factors that make you a winning team. Would any of these factors exist? Like, by the way, who is the shot caller in this team? I missed something. Like, in this team, logically, it should actually be Crowny's the shot caller. I've heard actually he can call around himself when he has carry potential. If it's Nemesis, I've heard Nemesis isn't even the guy to do that. He's the guy where he wouldn't call and then he'd just hate or blame you for doing the wrong call, or he'd just expect you to do the right thing without communicating. He's got a little bit of the forgiving him in that sense. Crowny, again, he's overqualified. I actually think, by the way, this guy should have been on an LEC team last year. I get why you sit out, because you can just collect all that salary because of the German labour laws, but I think that's a bit whack, personally. Yes, you need money to live, but I think at the end of the day, you're in league and esports to accomplish things, to be a great player, to have a legacy, to win championships. And the worst thing is, this guy in 2023 could have won the fucking LEC. It was one game away from doing it. He was at Worlds. So what I think's so criminal to me is, this guy, I think, should still be on an LEC contender. Imagine we go back and run back 2024, we just put Crowny instead of fucking Noah on Fnatic. You're telling me we can't pick one trophy up? Bro, they already almost lost to Fnatic. They did lose to Fnatic in the upper bracket of that summer, but they could have lost to the finals anyway. Like, I think that's winnable right there. That's the firepower you need. He would have stepped forwards when fucking Noah would step back and just die. Like, actually, Crowny could fucking carry those fights. So, sadly, I actually think of all the people here, look, Nemesis just chooses not to play. I think Crowny's somewhat been, like, soft blacklisted out of the LEC or something like that. It just seems like people don't want him. I don't get it. I think he's a fabulous player. He's not actually at the talent level of Reckless and Nemesis at their peak, But he's good. Like, Crowny's like what, tier 2 or tier 3 player historically in LEC. For me, Crowny is at ADC what like Nuke Duck is at mid. Like, they both have a clear way to play the game. They're both going to put in their practice. They're both going to be above average and good. They're probably not going to be the absolute best. They're going to be like border on second or third. And if there's a generational talent, you're probably beaten out. Like, an upset will probably always be better than a Crowny, and a Reckless will probably always be better than a Crowny, depending on style. And in the same way as Caps will always be better than Nemesis. But the point is, you can be up there, and you can be the person who's good enough that someone else on your team carries the final and beats G2 and Caps. So I think it's actually just sad Crowny's in this position. This implies to me, again, just there probably wasn't any off-season interest, or if they were, it was just for shit teams and nobody making a contender wants this guy. Again, maybe people are going for ERL talents and young players or Koreans out of solo queue. So actually, Crowny's one of the ones I feel the most sad for. He's in this team. I actually feel like I would either want this to be like 4 rookies and unknown players out of solo queue, and then Crowny, and he gets to like show off his leadership, and he gets to be the main guy in the character in that sense. I think in this team, one, if you win, I can tell you what fans are like. They'll just say it was Reckless, Nemesis, and cause it's Caedrel's team. And then if you lose, you're one of the people. The Thebausffs for inting will get blamed. Velia for being a rookie and being the jungle will get blamed. You will get blamed as crowd shot anytime you don't carry a team fight that Reckless feeds in or Nemesis just dies in stupidly and gets blown up early on. You will get the blame for that, maybe even internally from those people. But since it's not a top-level pro team, I doubt there'll ever be a massive blow-up about that. So, I don't know. The Crowny one I'm a bit sad about, even though, by the way, he obviously is mega overqualified to be at this level. Reckless is an interesting one because if it was ADC, he's insanely overqualified to be at this level. If it's support, we've barely seen him play support competitively. He played in a team where he can't speak their native language, the language they communicate the majority of their life in Korean. By the way, anyone who actually believes he can fluently speak Korean, you are a mark on a level. It's actually disturbing how stupid you are. But I won't go into that anymore. So to me, he could barely speak in that team and communicate. And he was playing support. I imagine he was just following the lead of the other guy. And they were doing what they could. They weren't a bad bot lane. But again, who gives a fuck about LCK Challenger? Don't pretend you do. You never gave a fuck 1 second before Reckless joined that league. And you don't give a fuck now that he's left that league. So stop pretending you ever cared about the level of any player in LCK Challenger, or that you knew what their level was, or that as a result, you know if this guy is world class at support or not. You have no clue whatsoever. You don't have even the faintest concept. None of us do. Let's just be honest about it. At least I'm honest. Now, what's funny is, in a way, I'd rather Reckless came back as ADC, because obviously he has sort of unfinished business. He's never actually won an LEC trophy, if people don't know. He won when it was still EULCS in the last year of it being EULCS. If you don't know, LCS franchised in Season 8, LEC was franchised for Season 9. So Season 9 onwards, he never won an LEC title. So I think he has unfinished business. He hasn't won in donkey's years. Remember, people like Faker have been winning in the latter years. But I also do think, as you'll find out in my video when you hear what his teammates and former coaches say, I do think that as a role, no great player in history has been left behind more by their primary role than Reckless. The way he used to play, I won't say it was textbook, but it could be very effective. It was a very defensive style of ADC. There aren't even team fights like that anymore. I actually think, you saw it in 2023, I think he would be a bottom half LEC ADC if he played again. So, the switch to support isn't terrible. Now, I will say, I do think historically, I'll be very interested if he keeps with support, if he actually ever does embrace, like, the engaged meta. Because this isn't a player I see as, like, it's funny, he's played with Mickey X and Hillsang. I think this guy is terribly suited to be a Mickey X Hillsang. Obviously, he has been a KDA player, and he is a player that cares a lot about dying, which again used to be a massive concern in the first 4 to 5 years of competitive league. In the modern day, the question isn't, did you die? Was that right? The question is, sorry, you died and that's wrong. The question is, was this death an acceptable one, or worth it, or even the right death? Sometimes the death makes sense depending on the fight, the abilities, the resources, the situation of the game state, etc. Whether you're defending someone else, whether it turns the fight to get kills for your team. I think that's an area where I have my concerns about him as a support. There's a reason why people saw that he played Janna and just thought, right, he's going to be an old school support. He's going to be like the Lulu, Janna, Sona type support. Well, first of all, half those champions aren't even played anymore. Secondly, does that support even really exist? I guess sometimes you get the ranged and the mage supports meta, but traditionally, you do need the support often to be an engaged player, and you do need them to die, and you do need them to peel, and you do need them to sometimes be blown up immediately, but risk it anyway and dance around and go in there. And even if he played Janna, would that even work? So at this level, surely he's a good enough support player to play Janna at this level, or whatever the fuck he's going to play in EU. But isn't this a bit of a bomber? Like, first of all, he claims that, he wants to live at home, blah, blah, all that. That's fine. If that's true, okay. If he's ever planning on coming back to the LEC level, does this move get him there? I don't know about that. Like, I think one thing people are really underestimating is this team almost has to win every game. Otherwise, any loss just is such a blow. Like, your stock goes down so much from any loss that actually, for people like Reckless and Crowny, I don't think there's any upside to playing in this league. Like, I don't really believe, I mean, people are saying, yeah, but then you could get into EU Masters, you could win EU Masters and prove you deserve it. That's so far away, it's ridiculous, guys. And also, winning EU Masters is hard. It's not as easy as, you don't just put together a roster and just win EU Masters. Like I said, they had that roster with like a bunch of fucking top players in Karmy Corp and Reckless, and they couldn't even win the LFL. They eventually won EU Masters, but that doesn't mean it's a guarantee. So I don't really get it myself. And also, like I say, it's also kind of just a bit whacked, like, it doesn't really work as a narrative for Reckless if he's support, right? Because then you can only really judge him since he was in T1 onwards. The rest of his career isn't really that relevant to how he is as a support player, is it? So I don't really know how that's supposed to work. I do think, though, as I say, with where the support role is, I think it makes more sense to put him as support than as ADC. I think his day has been and gone as ADC, at least in terms of his mentality. I think if he had the right coach, spoiler, that doesn't exist, as you'll find out. But forget if you had the right coach. If he himself decided to update his mentality and play differently and avert some of his, let's say, fears about the game or anxieties, obviously his hands were still very good. He could still be an excellent player. If you go back to 2021, 2022, he's still a good player. Admittedly not as much in the RLs, but in theory, a lot of his problems in the RLs were also based on other things as well, but we'll get to that in that video. Then lastly, there's the whole thing of the Caedrel being the coach, right? Right, this part, it's funny because to me, this is the biggest slam dunk for everyone else. Everyone else would love to see Caedrel coach a professional team, right? Which isn't really what he's doing here. My problem here is, one, if it's all going to be on stream, you're not really coaching. Like, some of coaching is having, by the way, private conversations even from your team, having like a player that comes separately in a one-on-one, you have a whole discussion. Is that stuff still going to happen, but it's just not going to be on stream? Are we only going to do things that are shown on, like, for example, is every VOD review / feedback session on stream and the scrims, and then there's nothing else separately? Or do we still do like private convos and then we only show certain things, a la like a reality show? That's a question I would have immediately. Because if it's mainly all public, then one, I don't think Caedrel can even be himself necessarily, because part of his appearance on camera is a public persona. Then you've got the aspect that you also don't talk the same way or think the same way that you do by yourself or one-on-one as you do in a group of people and with a dynamic of different people that you've known for certain years. And you don't know this guy as much, or this guy's older and you respect him, and this guy's young and he has to prove himself. There's all sorts of things that, like, remember, coaching's a full-time job. This isn't going to be a full-time job here because obviously he said it won't affect the streaming time, and it's not supposed to be like, he's not in T1 fucking LCK teams. He's not like giving up his whole life. But that's the thing I actually have concerns about. And then lastly, I'll just throw this out there. Caedrel in his teams, this is why I was one of the first people to have him on my talk shows. I always thought he spoke very well about the game and communicated his ideas in English in a very fluent manner. And he seemed like, because he's been to international language school, he can speak other languages. He also seemed like he could relate to other people culturally and in terms of speaking to them and understanding of there. But I always thought this, he's one of the players that worried me as a pro. Because it's like, bro, I hear what you're saying and it's smart. I hear what you're saying and I can tell you understand the game. I hear what you're saying and I can tell what you're saying might even be right. But what's the mismatch when you then get into the game and you say all that shit in the game to your teammates when you were jungler, or when you then in the review session say what you think? What's the disconnect? Why isn't your brilliant conversations and thoughts, why isn't it translating to your opponents the same, teammates the same way? Why are they not getting on the same page? That was something I was worried about. So I actually think, even though, by the way, if Caedrel's to break down a VOD of this team, I bet he'd be brilliant at it on stream. I don't necessarily know how much as a coach he's going to be able to add or what he's going to be able to bring out. It's obviously his team, so he can do what he wants. Then there's the whole angle I'll just very briefly address. So no one technically knows where they're going to play, but as far as I know, it's based on things like where you live and who the players are. That's going to decide the eligibility and region you play in, right? So I saw Caedrel claim nothing is locked, but I saw that Rich's Wrath, who would know better than me, says that based on the players, it'll have to be NLC or so. Well, NLC is one of the worst DRLs if people don't know. It's not even, like, the best DRLs far and away to this day is obviously the LFL, the French one, and the LVP Super League are the Spanish ones. Not just because of the fan base, the amount of money put in there, the fact that players from those teams routinely go up to the LEC, and also then you have Spanish and French teams in the LEC, so they want to recruit from there. And then on top of that, you have coaches who are French and Spanish in the LEC, so then they ask their friends who are in the French and Spanish scene, what do you think of him? What was it like work with him? The stories get told, and then someone has to fuck off and play in Korea for a year because no one wants to play. Oh, sorry, shit, did I say that out loud? No, I mean, obviously people talk, don't they? So I don't necessarily know that NLC is that great a league to be in. Like, here's another thing. You know what I said about LCK Challenger earlier? I'm just going to say it right now. 99% of people now going, wow, this will be great. I can't wait. I'm going to tune into every game. Won't do that. It won't be great, and they will lose interest really quickly. They don't care about NLC. They didn't care about NLC, and the second this team dissolves, they won't care about NLC ever again, or at least this lineup dissolves. And then I'll also just throw this out there. I just don't believe you. Like, when you say, I'm definitely going to watch this, will you though? Like, I could believe viewership will be larger than it would have been for a fucking Checks Notes NLC game. And you do have Caedrel streaming. That could certainly help. I mean, if everyone's going to stream, you could obviously maximize the viewership way more. I could believe that could drive viewership. But I don't think people are actually going to be able to maintain that interest. Because beyond following them like a stan or a little bit of novelty, like, I wonder how they're doing, you're going to very quickly realise, but I don't care about the opposition. In fact, I don't know the opposition. I don't recognise them as good or have a frame of reference for how good they are. Am I ever going to see these people do anything? So do I invest myself to care? So if they're smurfing, you're going to go, well, it's just easy. And this is actually not even particularly high-level league, or you don't necessarily enjoy it that much. You just enjoy watching players I like. Or they might even struggle. And then, I'm sorry, I made this point earlier about LTA, about how I think what will happen is some of the Southern Conference teams will steal world spot off the Northern Conference, and that won't make people think, wow, Southern Conference is better than I thought. They'll go, wow, Northern Conference is as shit as a minor region. So similarly, when they lose any games or have close games or someone loses lane or gets solo killed, people will just think, oh wow, my goat is washed. These players aren't that good anymore. And some NLC player I don't give a fuck about, aka think is a bum, has just beaten them. So actually I'm less interested in these players. I guess I shouldn't hope they make it to LEC. So that's already a concern I have. I mean, I'll just throw this out there. Wasn't this concept already tried? Didn't Echo Fox make that team, Delta Fox, to play in Challenger? That was the stream meme team. It was like Voy Boy and I'm a Cutie Pie, Skara. Like, it sounded great. It was all these massive personalities and names, some of them who played together, who were really funny people and very entertaining. They were going to stream their games. And everyone on Reddit loved it initially. And then they sort of followed the odd game. And then eventually no one really gave a fuck, did they? I don't think people really were that into that project. It just sounded good in theory. But then in reality, you were just watching some washed players on just not that good players anymore play a level of league you didn't care about and not be the absolute best team. So I think similarly, the main thing that can save you in this team is there is a world where particularly Nemesis and Crowny could just be borderline world class at their roles. And if that's true, you could have a spectacle of just them dominating everyone and just fucking wrecking everyone completely. But I could also see a world where, like, Reckless has some games that are tricky. Velia, like I said, just fucking ints a game or two because he's a rookie. Thebausffs just does Thebausffs things. And I could see a world where people lose interest in this team real quick. Or it just spirals into some insane fandom / stan culture thing of just hating on the players you don't like in the team and asking them to be caught 24/7, or trying to infer like that they're not serious, or they're into you on purpose, or they don't care about you, or they're rude. Or I could see that. That's the part people probably haven't thought about. You're thinking, if you're anyone in this team, fucking hell, I'm in Caedrel's team, I'm playing with bloody Reckless, and I've got these massive famous players. This is going to be awesome. Everyone who isn't Reckless, by the way, could get giga flamed off this to oblivion by Reckless's fans. If you don't understand that, you don't understand the way that guy's career has been, and you will love my video. Well, you won't really. That's a facetious comment. You will hate my video because it will actually shatter your illusions entirely about who Reckless is in his career. So I don't even know that in practice that it really does work on the, like, oh, and everyone will be watching. Like, yeah, will they? Didn't everyone tell me that about LCK Challenger? Didn't you all claim you were going to, oh, everyone's going to be watching LCK Challenger, including Caedrel? Was everyone that interested? I could believe the viewership went up, but the bazillions of people on Reddit clearly I don't, put it this way, 99% of people who ever commented on Reckless in LCK Challenger, I don't think they even watched 3 matches he played the whole year. Not 3. I just don't believe it. So I think that was just, again, an idea that sounded good, but in reality, you didn't really care about. Then lastly, there's the whole thing. I could make like a 1-hour video about this, but I'll keep this brief, which is just the idea that Caedrel wants to own a team. I've got to tell you, mate, I think that is a terrible idea. Like, here's what's funny. It could be an amazing idea, one of the best ideas ever, but not the way you're doing it, it would appear. Because you're doing it half in, half out, it looks like. You're making like a not super serious team. It's going to be an NLC or a smaller ARL. It's not like a giant thing where you're committed to like 10 years down there, you're going to make it. Here's the problem, basically. I could see this just being something that is a time sink, potentially costs him money, and in the end doesn't accomplish all the things he wants beyond give some of his friends a chance to play and him the chance to, as a vanity project, play dress-up coach and do it on stream and get more. I could see it helping his stream and his personal brand, put it that way. I even think the Los Ratones guy, Thousand Angle's not bad, it's even a good name for a team. The issue I have goes like this, which is, in the long run, if you're going to start a team, because it can just cost and be a waste of everything you have currently, I think the best approach is to commit to it. Because here's the thing, Carlos making a team, G2, starting his game as 2, ended up being genius, didn't it? And people don't know, that move shows how perspective is everything. Because when Carlos made that move, he still could have been in both SK Gaming and played in EULCS, or there was other teams, because you're a massive draw at the time, wanted to sign him to be the mid laner. Instead, he chose to go down to Challenger, make his own org, and now, for years, they didn't qualify, so everyone laughed at them. Then eventually, they rebranded as G2, got to the league, won all the championships, eventually became the greatest Western org ever in League of Legends history. And now, that was genius. Because remember how, when they were pro players, Expeke was, for the majority of the time, the better Spanish mid laner than Ocelot, right? Carlos. But Expeke made Origin, and that means nothing now. And his pro career ended in like season 6, guys. A billion years ago, and people barely remember Expeke. Meanwhile, Carlos had not as good a playing career, but as an owner, it's night and day. Like, put it this way, Carlos as an owner has massively outperformed Expeke in a way Expeke as a player didn't as much outperform Carlos the player. Expeke was one level above Carlos. As owners, Carlos is at the absolute top, and Expeke was like a failed owner at this point in time. He literally had his mum run the org, and she's the one who did those silly things like put up like teamwork and stuff on the fucking wall, like some mad like HR nightmare. So I don't actually know. If what he was doing now was this, it was like, look, in the future, I might not want to be a streamer anymore. So I'm going to make a team. I'm going to start it out as an ERL team. I'm going to see in the future if I can get like a massive branding built around. So obviously I can play to the Spanish and the English audience. Then in the future, I'm going to bring in investors. Then we're going to buy an LEC spot. And then I'm eventually going to phase out being a streamer, or I'm going to be a streamer and do Tarek style, hold up the league's viewership. And then eventually one day I'm going to be like my own Carlos. And I'm going to have my own team and I'm going to do all my... If that's true, by the way, if that is a long-term project, that is a genius idea. Because you will not always be the biggest streamer in the world. That might even end in 2 years. You might not even care about League in 2 or 3 years. But you can have a giant company like G2 Esports that if you parlay it correctly, you're going to need a lot of luck and a lot of things to go the right way, but you're already a talented person that everyone cares about and will have people who want to help you. The chances there to make a way bigger business than being a streamer, a massive streamer in 2024. So that would be a genius pivot, in my opinion. I just don't know if that is the pivot he's doing now. This looks more to me like you run this project for a year or two, a la a disguised toast. And actually, if you just don't like the way it goes, maybe in a year or two, you pull the plug and you go, hey guys, I haven't got any more money, or it wasn't going the right approach, or we didn't get the kind of sponsorship interest or return on investment that we wanted. So we enjoyed the project, but sadly, we're going to be shuttering our doors and everyone's going to be going their separate ways. Good luck to everyone. Like, that would be a real shame if that's the news that you get in a year or 2 years from now. Whereas, I actually think if he did have plans to one day pivot to have... I mean, by the way, Caedrel's the sort of person I would want to be an owner in LEC. He's someone who I actually think would have like a mixture of like... I don't know how good his business acumen is, but I believe he'd have a very interesting approach to players and developing players and not being a dickhead a la Carmine Corp with slashing people's fucking careers after one split, or bringing in bozos who don't even make sense, or just going like, out of loyalty, yeah, you can just play an extra split even though you're fucking gash at this game, mate. Like, I don't get it personally. So I'd rather he went all in that sense, because I could see this being a team like the Sky's Toast where, look, if you've got loads of income, these people make millions and millions a year, you can spend that. That can be your chosen project, like, hey, like a vanity project. In the same way as like a billionaire might say to his girlfriend, you could start a little flower shop. He doesn't really give a fuck if she ever makes any money selling flowers. That's just something for her to do. It's a little fun vanity project, right? She can go out there. It doesn't matter if she loses $10,000 a month. He's a billionaire. He goes, go for it, love. If you want to do it that way, fine. But I would hope this is something you're committed to doing, because this can't just be a project to let let Reckless play support from home in Sweden, right? This can't just be a project where Crowny plays here instead of owning everyone in LEC like he should be doing. This can't be where Nemesis pretends he's actually playing Professional League of Legends again, as opposed to competing for championships in major regions, which is what he was supposed to, on the tracking trajectory timeline of his career, be doing at this point in time. That would be whack, wouldn't it? If it really is just a fun team, I think it'll be fun for some people and very much not fun for other people. And I just don't really believe that you're all going to watch. I think you're going to get hyped around the Reddit threads, and anytime there's some drama, you'll be all over it. But I think most people won't be tuning in to each match this team plays. Los Ratones.
Hey guys, Caedrel here, and you're watching Thorin's YouTube channel. I may never have found my way to playoffs, but I'm pretty sure Thorin's never found the clit. So yeah, enjoy the video.
Dr. Dre had NWA, DMX had the Rough Riders, and who is the crew holding me down, supporting me when necessary? It is, of course, my Patreon subscribers, the Skrilluminati. So this video, along with all the others on my channel, is kindly supported by Matt Pugnatio Rajcula, Animosity, Banediesel, Jasun, Jensen Goh, Tosh, Thooorin, and you know who a special thanks goes out to, because it's always my main man, Jerky's Minion. Do you want to ask a question for my video AMA? Do you want to find out who are going to be the guests on future interview episodes? Do you want to know who the guests are on my talk shows? Or maybe you'd like to suggest a topic or a guest. Perhaps you even want to take part in one of those lengthy, tailored to you discussions around esports that I do with the top tier donators. If any of those perks or others catch your fancy, then put your money where your mouth is, support me, and join the Skrilluminati today via the Patreon link where? In the description box below.